The current president this morning, Joe Biden, making no apologies after a series of off-script remarks on the world stage in Europe over the weekend, even insisting that Russia's Vladimir Putin cannot stay in power, insinuating there should be a regime change.
This all despite that his team has desperately been in damage control, trying to walk back everything that he says.
Yeah, the man asking the questions we all want answers to. Peter Doocy live outside the White House after pressing Joe Biden. Hey, Peter.
Good morning. And the president says he's not walking anything back. But for days, officials that work for him have been. And so I brought some direct quotes from the overseas trip to the president.
What's getting walked back?
It made it sound like, just in the last couple days, it sounded like you told U.S. troops they were going to Ukraine. It sounded like you said it was possible the U.S. would use a chemical weapon. And it sounded like you were calling for regime change in Russia, and we know
None of the three occurred.
None of the three occurred.
None of the three.
And the president gave us a peek at how he prepped. Look at this on the little card, some close to near quotes of what he eventually said, like, I was expressing the moral outrage I felt towards the actions of this man, and I was not articulating a change in policy. Right there on the card. The bit about Putin not remaining in power still has the Kremlin saying this. This is a statement that is certainly alarming. We will continue to track the statements of the U.S. president in the most attentive way. And Republicans here, now that the president's back in the States, are claiming that the president should be the one who's more attentive.
Watching the cascade of blunders from Biden, every time he explains one thing, it gets worse and worse and worse. It is incredibly dangerous, this kind of presidential weakness.
And I also followed up with the president about what exactly he meant when he said the U.S. would respond to a Russian chemical weapons attack in kind. And he told me that to ask that, I've got to be silly. Back to you.
So, Peter, here's a silly question. When Joe Biden announces a big program, in the back of the room you're at, there's a great big teleprompter that he can read. But then when he answers questions of the press, in particular, since he was cleanup on aisle 1 yesterday, he's got a little cheat sheet that has the answers he's supposed to respond to, right?
And that is, he's got a whole comms staff and national security staff, and this is an issue where they want to make sure that his wording is exactly right. And so that is what you see there on the card. If you check the quotes that he was using, he repeated them almost exactly, and that is what this huge national security apparatus wants to make sure that he says, not an ad lib.
Are you saying whoever typed out that cheat sheet is really the president? Really making all the decisions?
No, I just think that they want to make sure that he states the policy exactly right, because this weekend he said something about U.S. policy that everybody in the world thought meant let's go get rid of Putin. And it turns out that that is not the U.S. policy. And so they just keep repeating that over and over. But the president's not walking anything back.
Peter, you're there when these things happen. When it comes to the corrections and the walkbacks, are you able to confirm the president is consulted before a walkback happens? I mean, and who is it issuing these corrections?
Well, basically, so when we were in Warsaw the other day, I was in the press filing center when the president said that this, for the love of God, this man cannot remain in power. And there was a White House official that I reached out to and heard back from almost immediately to say he's not talking about regime change. He's not talking about basically, to summarize, the politics of Russia. He's just talking about his feelings for Vladimir Putin. And so there are, we're not the only ones that catch these things in real time.
Yeah. But I mean, what if he meant it? Then his staff would be contradicting him in real time.
Or what if he changed the policy?
Yeah.
On the fly.
Well, and the president does set the policy, but usually just not on the fly. And so if they're going to change it to regime change in Russia, they're probably going to have a meeting about that here first.
Let's call him.
Right. Yeah.
Well, these questions that you're asking him are needed, and everywhere I go, I hear people say, tell Peter Doocy he's doing an excellent job, and you really are, because these are questions we all want to know. It is an important question. It's not silly to ask about chemical weapons.
And credit to President Biden for taking so many of the questions so that we could be clear about exactly what we heard overseas and what it is that he meant.
Yeah. He set the record straight. You got it wrong, Peter. That's what he said. Sorry.
Thank you, Peter.
Probably wouldn't be the first time.
Well,
right.
Senator Rand Paul said that his gaffes, the president's gaffes, are national security risks. I mean, they are dangerous, and it's humiliating. Who's running the White House? It's just chaotic. Does he even know what his own policies are if someone in the background is walking back everything he says?
It's absolutely unacceptable, and it's very dangerous. When not only do we not know who's calling the shots.
It's not leadership.
But world leaders don't know who's calling the shots. Allies and enemies alike. It's not leadership.